Volume 5. Chapter 73. My Pucci Shrine Will Collapse Supremely. Part 2. No one in the spiritual communication array paid any attention to Shilian's urgent announcement. The chatter in the general array was deafening. It seemed something huge had happened. "Your Highness, did you say something?" Fengshen shouted to him. "It's really chaotic in here right now." Shilian raised his voice to reply. "Fengshen! I said Ling Wen is the original creator of the Brigade Immortal. She ran away wearing it. Watch out for her." "What?" Fengshen shouted. "That's what happened?" Shilian was about to expand on the details when the noise by his ear abruptly stopped, and nothing more could be heard. Confused, he tried calling again. "Everyone? Is everyone still there?" He attempted to reconnect a few times, but still no one answered. "It's no use," Hua Cheng spoke up. "Ling Wen created the upper court spiritual communication array, and she must have just destroyed it. It'll need to be entirely rebuilt. What should we do then?" If he wasn't contacting Ling Wen or the Windmaster directly, he primarily communicated with the upper court through the general spiritual communication array. He didn't know the verbal passwords of any other heavenly officials. And now that the general communication array was destroyed, he could no longer depend on Ling Wen or the Windmaster. What should he do? Hua Cheng seemed to sense his concerns. "Don't worry. Didn't Gaga already make the key issue clear? Not all the heavenly officials of the upper court are idiots, and Junwu is present in the heavens right now. As long as you've done your due diligence in reporting, it'll be fine." Shilian had been thinking the same thing, and he nodded in agreement as he brought his mad dash to a stop. They had already crossed several mountaintops and left the pursuing religious masters far behind, though it seemed they wouldn't be able to catch up with the Brigade Immortal and Kling Yizhen. "If Gaga still wants to investigate the Brigade Immortal, you'll have to hurry," Hua Cheng added. However, Shilian shook his head. "That was before. And now that Qi Ying is chasing Ling Wen, we've got more important matters on our hands." Sun Lung, he stared at Hua Cheng in his arms, his gaze intent. "Your form seems to have changed again." When Hua Cheng was disguised as Ling Ying earlier, he had the appearance of a 15 or 16-year-old boy, and it wasn't easy for Shilian to carry him. Even if he could, it wouldn't look good. But Hua Cheng seemed to have shrunk, and he now looked to be more at most 11 or 12. Shilian could carry him with one arm, or even have him perch on his shoulder. However, Hua Cheng's air of composed ease had never wavered. "No need to worry, Gaga. It's a non-issue. The mountain will open its gates soon. Changing form is only a temporary tactic, and my old self will return after the situation is over." He unwrapped the bandages on his head as he spoke. A pair of deep black eyes gazed at Shilian from that snow-white face. The shadow of that handsome young man was still there upon his brow. Although he wore the face of a child, he still had that familiar, laid-back, unhurried air and expression. Shilian watched him in a daze, not speaking a word. Hua Cheng frowned slightly. "Your Highness, you..." Suddenly, Shilian's free hand reached out and pinched Hua Cheng's cheek. Hua Cheng's eyes widened as his face changed shape from the entirely unexpected squishing. "Gaga!" Shilian laughed. "Sorry, Sun Lung, but you're too cute. I can't help myself." Hua Cheng was speechless. Shilian continued to tenderly squish him. "Then, Sun Lung, are you going to keep changing?" he asked gently. "Are you going to turn into a child of 5 or 6? Or even better, a little baby?" Hearing the hope in his voice, Hua Cheng could only reply helplessly. "I'm afraid I will have to disappoint, Gaga." Shilian dropped his hand and grinned. "Nonsense. Sun Lung has never disappointed me. I'm really happy to have this chance to protect you." However, Hua Cheng muttered glumly, "I'm not happy." "Why is that?" Shilian asked. Hua Cheng's tone turned cold. "I hate looking like this." Shilian could actually detect a trace of loathing in his voice and was slightly taken aback. Hua Cheng lowered his head. "I don't want you to see me in such a useless form, much less be forced to protect me." His emotions seemed unsettled. Perhaps it was because his physical age had regressed. Shilian felt his heart stir, and he quickly gathered the boy into his arms and gently patted his back. "By that logic, I might as well just die. You've seen me in messes so many times," he chuckled. "Besides, it's not like you're actually useless right now. You're just temporarily conserving your strength, that's all." Hua Cheng buried his face in his shoulder. "It's not the same," he grumbled, voice muffled. "Your Highness, I have to be the strongest. I have to become stronger than everyone. Only then can I..." Although his voice was young and tender at the moment, a trace of fatigue lingered in his tone. "You've always been the strongest. But you don't need to be strong every waking moment of every day," Shilian soothed him. "Just think of this as giving me some face. Let me protect you this once, please? Okay?" It was a long time before Hua Cheng lifted his head. He placed his hands on Shilian's shoulders and gazed at him. "Your Highness, wait for me." "All right, I'll wait for you," Shilian promised. Hua Cheng vowed to him, very seriously, "Give me a little time. I'll be back very soon." Shi Lian smiled. "No rush. Go at your own pace." The next day the two came to a small town. Shi Lian was holding Hua Cheng's hand, and the two chatted leisurely as they strolled along the streets together. "Ghost kings of earlier generations are affected by Mount Tonglu's opening tremors. Does that also apply to Blackwater?" Shi Lian asked. Hua Cheng stood with one arm folded behind his back and held Shi Lian's hand with the other. "Yes," he replied, "but our situations are different, as are our training methods. And naturally, our ways of responding to stimulation are different as well." "For example," Shi Lian prompted him. "How does he respond to the aggravation?" "Hibernation, probably," Hua Cheng replied. A phrase written in large letters surfaced in Shi Lian's mind. "Eat when hungry, sleep when full." When Blackwater was mortal, he suffered the torment of jail. With only one meal every 3 days, he had to swallow it down even if he was given swill. Hua Cheng continued. Hunger ruined his stomach. Sometimes he'll feed nonstop, sometimes he'll refuse to eat anything at all. No wonder he was always so impressive when it came to swallowing things, Shi Lian mused. Given Hua Cheng's situation, he could have focused on devouring hungry ghosts. He possessed the same attribute, so they should have better suited his palate. However, of the 500-some ghosts devoured by Blackwater Demon Xuan, the majority were water ghosts. He must have chosen them because he remembered the face of Shiwudu and would intentionally pick such meals to break his water magic. At the end of these feeding frenzies, he would need to slumber and digest. "Indeed," Hua Cheng said. "I might as well mention that Qirong was trying to imitate Hixuan by feasting on human flesh." Shi Lian was briefly speechless. How could anyone consider eating humans the same as eating ghosts? After pondering for a moment, he asked, "The forest of upside-down corpses. Was he trying to imitate you with that?" "Correct," Hua Cheng replied. "He wanted to copy my blood rain aesthetic, but he didn't know how I did it, so he just crudely strung up rows of dead bodies." Today, Shi Lian finally understood why no one knew what to say whenever Qirong was mentioned. He had all the appearance, but none of the class. Shi Lian sighed. "Qirong took Guzi away. Who knows whether the poor child has been abandoned or eaten. And Windmaster, who knows whether it was Blackwater who took him away. I pray they're both safe." Then he asked, "What about your ghost city? Won't anyone stir up trouble there in the meantime?" "I locked up Ghost City when I left and leaked false information regarding my whereabouts," Hua Cheng replied. "Even if anyone tries to start trouble, they won't be too hard on that rabble when they don't find me there. But I'm sure there are plenty of eyes watching that place right now." Hua Cheng couldn't return to Ghost City, and Shi Lian couldn't take him to the heavens lest they be exposed by a heavenly official. This was why the two were frolicking aimlessly in the mortal realm's crowds without a destination in mind. Shi Lian knitted his brows. "You leaked false information, but Ling Wen leaked real information. I still don't understand how she managed to see through your Lang Ying disguise." "What I don't understand is something else," Hua Cheng said. "What?" Shi Lian asked. "It's regarding that foul cultivator Heaven's Eye. I've toyed with him a couple of times. His skills aren't bad," Hua Cheng said. "Yes, that's true," Shi Lian agreed. "He's got talent and puts in the effort." "Right. So why would he say that Kaga's lips are covered in ghost chi?" Hua Cheng questioned. Shi Lian's hands clenched, but he quickly loosened his grip when he remembered he was still holding hands with Hua Cheng. Hua Cheng pressed him on the subject, his voice grim. "Gaga, don't blow me off with words you'd use to placate those idiots. Tell me, what did I do to you that night?" "It's not what you did to me. It's more like what I did to you," Shi Lian thought. Just then his eyes lit up. "Wait, Sanlang, look over there." "Uga," Hua Cheng questioned. However, Shi Lian had already pulled him into a large and rather luxurious store. The store's owner stood at the counter and looked the two of them up and down. A cultivator and a layman made for a curious combination. "What can I do for you, Daozhong?" the owner asked. Shi Lian lifted Hua Cheng for the owner to see and smiled. "It's not for me, it's for him." Hua Cheng tilted his head. An instant's time later, Hua Cheng emerged from the back of the store. Lang Ying's clothes were suited to a 15 or 16-year-old and could no longer fit the current Hua Cheng, so Shi Lian picked out a new outfit especially for him. Shi Lian's eyes lit up the moment he came into view. What a dear little young master with skin as white as snow. Dressed in a robe as red as maple and fire, and a pair of deer leather boots decorated with silver chains. Hua Cheng looked both handsome and spirited. His raven locks were loose. He'd previously only had a single thin braid right next to his cheek. But Shi Lian couldn't help braiding another one on his left to match. It made him look even more sprightly. What was really too much, however, was his expression. His eyes were vivacious and bright, his air calm and steady. He truly looked like a little grown-up and nothing like a child. Such a contrast made it hard to look away. The ladies shopping in the store were all stunned, and they gathered around and clutched their hearts as they cried, oh my, nonstop in appreciation. Illustration. Hua Cheng languidly strolled over to Shi Lian, who clapped lightly. Just as I thought. Red suit Sanlang best. Hua Cheng helplessly tugged at the little braid on his left. As long as Gaga is happy, he grumbled. Shi Lian lowered his hand to put an arm around Hua Cheng's shoulders and smiled as they went to the front to pay. Hua Cheng's outfit wasn't cheap. Shi Lian normally didn't have much money to spare, so he usually wouldn't have entered such a fancy store. However, he had saved up a small fortune for renovating the shrine, and now that there was nothing left to renovate, he could buy Hua Cheng some new clothes before worrying about anything else. As he was counting out his coins one by one, Hua Cheng squeezed in and slapped a piece of gold foil on the counter with a resounding wham. Shi Lian commented. Likewise, the owner commented. Furthermore, the ladies also commented. Keep the change, Hua Cheng said. Gaga, come on, let's go. He tugged at the corner of Shi Lian's sleeve and strolled outside. Strolled outside the store with his hands clasped behind him. Shi Lian smiled and started to walk after him, but was surprised when Hua Cheng backtracked right into his arms as he came back inside. Shi Lian held him steady by the shoulders. What's wrong? He looked up and saw a familiar figure in the flowing crowd outside, and his heart lurched as well. Coincidentally, the store owner asked, Would you two like to purchase anything else? Shi Lian raised his hand. Yes, please bring me that robe. And that is chapter 73.